Happy holidays, Time Crunch fans. I'm your host, Coach Adam Pulford. The holidays can be a tricky time of year for endurance athletes because we try to keep regular training patterns, but we have all the other issues like schedule changes, habit changes, and lifestyles that start to just get all over the place. We move away from a somewhat normal, predictable schedule of work, training, and family activities. We go to lots of social time, holiday parties, and maybe a little extra travel with all the stresses that go along with it. I'd say that this is probably the majority of the athletes listening to this podcast and people that I know personally. However, another trend, though less common, that I see and hear are some athletes that just do less of all that holiday themed stuff. They stick closer to home and perhaps they have more time to do what they want to do around this time of year. So if you're extra time crunched or extra time rich leading into the new year, I've got a few training tips that will help bring some perspective to all of this and set you up for an awesome 2025 for fitness, performance, health, fun, all that kind of stuff. So, with me to discuss this and more is CTS coach Renee Eastman. Renee, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And, my first thing is I have some regrets because my Charlie Brown Christmas tree is downstairs and I should have put it behind me. Yeah. You are winning the day here, Renee. So thank you for being festive. Although I do have a Christmas mug with me.
Terrific.
Yes. Well, we have wasted enough time, at least 45 seconds of talking about meaningless stuff. Let's dive into the first question. Renee, do you see athletes as more time crunched or time rich? Or is there like this kind of polarization of time going on with your athletes and people that you know, or am I just off my rocker?
I see it both ways. I
Yeah.
see a lot of folks, and myself included. I used to take, the Christmas and New Year's week off, and a lot of people do have those days off. And I would say probably 50 or 60% of my athletes have more time because they have
Mhm.
time off. And then, maybe the other percent are maybe they have that time off, but they're going to see family or they have family visiting, so they're even more time crunched maybe than normal, or just out of the routine, as you mentioned, visiting family and out of their element.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those athletes who are a little extra time crunched and I think it's like a lot of the people with kids,
Yeah.
busy job, lots of kids, or, they're going home to see family, that kind of thing. Um, they may have more time away from work, but it certainly is not more training time. Um, the main questions I get is like, Coach, I can't ride for a week. Am I going to lose it all? Am I going to lose all my fitness? What would you say to the extra time crunched athlete that is worried about that between Christmas and New Year?
Well, that a week or 10 days, 2 weeks doesn't make or break your fitness. That if you're training less or even not at all for 2 weeks, that doesn't derail everything, especially if you can plan for it ahead of time, that you're um, not in maybe a hole already going into the holidays, in the time off. And for some people, that might be involving some, cross training, maybe add some running, some strength work, some rowing, walking even, just saying, I would say mobile and active, as opposed to, in quotes, training. It doesn't have to be training to be a, productive, healthy trip. But I think the biggest uh, point I'd make is that whether it's you have extra time to train or less time to train, it's not going to make or break the whole year.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And I told you off recording that I was riding my bike and I was like, man, so many people overestimate the value of a week and underestimate the value of a year. So in
Yeah,
other words, if they have a
exactly.
really good week, it's like, man, I'm crushing it right now. This is gonna be great. Or if it's like I had the worst week ever, my life, my training is gone. Versus that boring consistency. How good was the year? How many years were in the year? How many good weeks did you have racked up? And so if anything for our listeners is like take that longer term approach, take your eyes off of the here and now and zoom out and take a look
Yeah,
at that
and the
training.
the better your year, it's the week off isn't as devastating, and the big week isn't as, productive or destructive, which I think we're going to get to when we talk about some of these challenges.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think to that point is if you have a really good year, you plan all of this well, and you made a nod to that too. If you plan for it, this is not as big of a deal, right? And I've done several episodes on detraining, and all detraining means is you're structuring your training with a purpose to decrease CTL and decrease some of these things so that physically and mentally you're ready to go for another season or another big block or something like that. So for those who want to learn all about detraining, check out episode number 120. And it's called Off-Season Training, How to Detrain with a Purpose. But that takes a lot longer to happen, okay, than a week or even 2 weeks. And I'll put in, because I just grabbed these, some of the research I did for that podcast. I'll put it in on the show notes here. But uh, for detraining to occur, we're talking like over 2 weeks to see a reduction in VO2 max and over 3 weeks to see a drop in anaerobic capacity. So for those people who are super worried about maybe 10 days of super off like training patterns and stuff, Renee, the proof is in the pudding to me. They ain't going to lose much.
That's true, Adam. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess to that point, uh, what I see anyway is like 2 weeks, they have a reduction in training, but most people can do something. And in those ways, and you can even sit on the couch if you want and eat pie for breakfast, as Renee likes to do, as she told me. Um,
My mom
is
makes a great apple pie, Adam.
I don't.
Great.
I love pie. We won't get into that, but I did the same thing after Thanksgiving, and it was delicious. Um, but even so, what this research says is 2 weeks of 15 days of inactivity, and we see a reduction in VO2 max. The reality is most people are doing some sort of activity. Renee, if they do have, I don't know, 3 or 4 days to train per week, what would you tell them to do in those 3 or 4 days?
I'm a huge fan of mobility work and yoga. You know, start your day with a few sun salutations.
Hmm.
Do a little bit of strength work. You know, um, my favorite body weight exercises. Push-ups, lunges, planks, um, side planks, dips. You can make a little, 15, 20-minute workout and just get the blood flowing to your body. You're probably going to feel better. Most of my athletes
Yeah.
don't feel great if they take 2, 3, 4 days off in a row of no activity
Hmm.
or limited activity. So just moving your body, doing some mobility, doing some yoga, doing a little bit of strength work can go a long way to just you feeling better. And on the cardiovascular side, I actually just went on I went to go visit my mom for a couple weeks, and I couldn't
Hmm.
take my bike. And I ran a little bit. I'm not much of a runner. Adam knows that.
It's true.
But I did a little bit of running in the weeks leading up to it, so that I could run and not, totally break myself down. And I just do, 25, 30-minute run. Not for me a tremendous amount of exercise, but a little bit. And I did that 3 or 4 times throughout the weeks, and that was enough to uh, make me feel better. Probably more so than it really impacted my fitness, but it was something, because there's a huge difference between the detraining that happens when I am in bed and I'm ill,
Hmm.
in bed for 2 weeks, not moving at all, versus just being a active person. And I find that when you're, visiting family, everybody wants to go for a walk or a hike or things like that. And
Hmm.
those can be great activities just to move your body for 30, 40 an hour every day. That
Yes.
goes a long way. Just
Yes.
movement.
I couldn't agree more, Renee. And one thing, literally a call this morning with one of my juniors, and she just got done with cyclocross nats, and we were like, and she's like 14, 15-year old, and I was like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we're just gonna, do less, detrain and talk about some of these things. She's like, okay, but can I go for like hikes and stuff? Because I just feel a lot better if I move around a little bit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. And she's getting that. She's learning that, she's learning that message, as a youngster. And that's awesome to hear. But I think for everyone, because this is very common for cyclists to be like, oh, it's off season. I'm going to start running. Just listen what Renee did. Like she started small. She went slow. She built up, and she has a prep phase before she could actually do some run phase training. Even the run phase was not much at all. Yeah, it probably didn't help you all that much, but it helped to maintain it, help you feel better. And there's some psychological stuff there that goes on that we probably don't need to get into, other than just like moving and sweating and taking care of your body. That's
And
healthy.
taking a break from the family. That's key too. Is get
Exactly.
outside for 30 minutes and just
Speaking of
uh,
psychology,
speaking
um,
of psychology.
yeah, no, I mean, I really do think that there are untold benefits of what we do as neurotic type A endurance athletes that gets us out in fresh sunshine, that has like kind of a moving meditation of sorts where our brain unravels and we can just get out and go and breathe and move. And so when you detrain or you take time off, we miss that, and we come and we feel super weird. And that's why everybody is scared of the big loss of fitness training monster, right?
Yeah.
Because we lose that, you know.
I've seen it more often than not that a time off for vacation, holidays, going on a cruise, that happens to a couple of my athletes year, they come back better. That,
Yeah,
they get 2 3 weeks after they come back, they're hitting their numbers again, and they feel great. They feel fresh. They feel reinvigorated. They feel motivated. So this forced break can actually be a good thing in the long run.
yeah. I actually just read an article from Training Peaks, and I put that in our show notes too. Forget the title of it, but it's like take a vacation. Here's why, essentially, and it's those same things. And it cites some research as well that lays up with the research that you and I were talking about of 2 to 3 weeks before anything super bad happens. And meanwhile, when you're on vacation, you usually move a little bit too, and that can help to maintain, uh, maintain, don't gain while you're on vacation. And I think it's not super calculated super compensation, which is a taper strategy that we use with athletes moving into a main competition, but there's a little bit of it too. I have some athletes that get ready for a vacation. They just, train their butt off, maybe get the extra miles in, that kind of thing. And then they take a vacation, they come back and they super compensate because they overreached in a functional way deeper
Yeah,
than what they were doing before. They take a break and they come back, and your body's response to that is super compensation, which all it means is you adapted well to your training because you took a big rest and now you're performing like the Hulk.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, a little bit of a hiatus there, but, um, so I guess to bring home the message of if you're extra time crunched, have a strong reality of what is real, what is doable. If between Christmas and New Year's, 10 days, and you'll get 3 days to train, do a little bit of something. And it could be like mobility work, like Renee is talking about. Could be running, hiking, whatever. Could be on the bike too. In my opinion, a couple days of endurance, maybe 1 day of threshold, because 1 day of threshold kind of per week keeps, or I'm just going to say mixed intensities, because it can be zone 3, 4, 5, 6, throw in a couple sprints. That's going to help to maintain a lot of that, a lot of the energy systems that we're talking about without having that decay. But some of the mobility stuff that Renee's talking about, you don't need a bike, you don't need running shoes. You can do that right away in the morning before people are up, just to have a little bit of a movement going on. Renee, other things that change, I would say, during the holidays are people's nutrition habits. Would you agree with that?
Uh, yes, grandma's pie.
Yes.
That's a big factor in the holidays. And I think that that's one of the questions or maybe concerns that I get from a lot of my athletes, concerned about weight management and, the big holiday meals and too many cookies and cakes and things like that. And, my stance is enjoy the holidays. You don't eat like that all the time. I'm not eating pie for breakfast every day of the week or every month of the year. But after Thanksgiving, yeah, or after Christmas, have a pie for breakfast. Um, I think one of the you tips that I would say is like, kind of avoid that all or nothing of
Yeah.
like, if
Yep.
I see that all the time, like, oh, I can't work out as much, I'm eating poorly, and that's like all in. And, you have to be thoughtful. And maybe
Hmm.
if you're going to have pie for breakfast, that you don't need your oatmeal on top of the pie. You can just
Yeah.
eat the pie. That's
Yeah.
enough. That if your activity level is down, you don't need as many calories. But in the big picture, 1 week of maybe you're overindulging a little bit is not going to derail you, you know, uh, for the whole year. And I see this time and again. You come back from your vacation or your trip, and your weight is up. It could easily be 3 or 5 pounds up. Here's my tip:
Yeah.
spend a day hydrating
Yeah.
and flush all that fluid out because you're just retaining a lot of water.
Yeah.
I think another thing that happens in the holiday meals, maybe if somebody is imbibing their mulled cider and eggnog and things like that, that you know alcohol calories do count.
Hmm.
They are extra calories, and I don't, if you like that and you want to have your enjoy your glass of wine with dinner or eggnog or whatever, just know that that does add calories. It usually lowers your inhibitions. You don't want to have your first glass of wine on an empty stomach, because then that's uh,
Gloves are
a
off after
recipe
that.
for disaster.
Yep.
I actually see, like, I just don't want you to go into the holiday meal starving yourself all day,
Well,
because then that's like, you go overboard
yeah,
on everything then.
I was gonna say I get that a lot where people like they kind of do somewhere in between. Like I'm gonna skip meals because they get the calorie counting game, right? So I'm
Yeah,
gonna skip some meals leading up, and then I'm just gonna like go for it at dinner. So it's like kind of this pseudo fasting and then like extreme meal sort of thing.
yeah.
Eh,
I'd
Strategy
say
or
it's
good strategy or bad strategy?
a better strategy. I don't think that is a good strategy. I think a better strategy is eat fairly normally
Hmm.
going up to it. Then the next day, you have all these calories on you. Go on your big hike the next day.
Yeah.
I'll credit Stacey Sims for this quote: "Think preload instead of reload."
Yep. Go.
Don't starve yourself and do the big hike before the big dinner. Eat fairly normally so you're not totally famished. You can eat. You can enjoy. Yeah, have the gravy, have the stuffing. Have the pie. Go for it. But if you're not totally famished, you're going to eat a more modest amount.
Hmm.
And then if you have all those extra calories on board, have plenty of energy next day to go for a big hike. Or not. If you eat one big meal, it does not change the scale. Just like one day of fasting or dieting doesn't change your scale so much, neither does one day of overindulgence.
Well, I was about to say December 26th will be the day to go for a Strava segment, full all out. That's what everybody's listening here. That's what they're probably thinking about
Yeah,
now. Yeah, and I think to that nutrition end of things, it's like if you can play, if you understand like the calories in and calories out, and you're aware, that's good because you're becoming more aware of that. And if you're like, you know what, and I'll raise my hand and say, I love my old fashioned. Like I'm gonna have a couple of fashions to celebrate Christmas, but don't have that be the nightcap either. Like don't like maybe you skip dessert because you had your alcohol, but then in the evening, I'd say, drink a couple glasses of water before you go to bed because that's an extra hydration too in the way and it's going to help to bring awareness. Why am I drinking water? Why am I not going for the pie? Why am I not going for the extra glass of wine? Whatever is, you're bringing awareness to those habits that you're doing, and all of this is in moderation. Okay,
right.
all the food, if it's the alcohol, if it's the lack of training, just everything in moderation. That's the boring answer.
Yeah, and I think that, all or nothing approach of like, oh, well, I blew it and I had too many
Yeah.
calories today,
Right.
so I'm going to do it tomorrow too. That you can enjoy your day, have a good time, and then be like, okay, I'm gonna get back on track tomorrow,
Yep. Yeah.
right? Or
Exactly.
next week when I'm back at home, whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Exactly. So as we kind of like segment from the time crunched athlete to the nutrition strategies that can apply to everybody, how about some of your athletes, Renee, and some of the people listening that might be a little extra time rich for these
Hmm.
next couple of weeks? Should they just go full tilt, take advantage of it, or should it's the end of the year? Should they not be training as much? What do you say?
It depends. It depends on the individual's goals and what they have going on. I would say most of my athletes who are time rich want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Especially this time of year, most of my athletes are training indoors midweek because even if they have, if it's not wintry weather, it's too dark to train. So
Yep.
that they get some time to train outdoors or just train more. So most of my athletes who are in the time rich, they have the time off of work, they want to do a little more. I know I have at least two or three people who are doing the Festive 500. That's a real popular
Hmm.
one. That is it's a Rapha challenge, 500 kilometers over the 8 days from Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve. I think that's
Hmm. Yep.
the timeline that you do, 500 kilometers. And there's also other challenges out there. I used to do, I've done it a couple of times back in my day. Uh, Star Wars movie challenge. There are 25 hours of Star Wars movies. And
Okay.
because I was training a lot indoors, right
Yeah.
here in Colorado, so training a lot
Yeah.
indoors. And I used to do every single, all the nine series from, New Hope to uh, the Last Jedi, and then and the solo movie, um,
So you
and so
you
so
ride
I would.
inside for all 25 hours of this?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
I'd ride through. I do movie challenges. I've done like
Okay.
the Hobbit series and things like that. But the Star Wars challenge is the big one because that's the 25 hours.
Wow. And so, yeah, I guess I was going to say, so it has to be inside for all time. Yeah, I guess it would have to be if you watch the movie.
Yeah, but I'm one of those crazy people who enjoys riding Swift, so I don't mind.
Wow. Yeah, that is impressive, Renee. I don't think I will take that on, or nor could take that on actually. So, mad respect to you.
Yeah, movie marathon challenges. So yeah, whatever your challenge. I'm not saying there's necessarily smart, and maybe we can get into that part of it. Is how effective are some of these challenges?
Yeah.
And what if you're the guy who asked the question, so what can you do with that extra time? Is
Mhm.
it just riding, an extra 2 hours a day?
Yeah. I think like in that way, here's a good example. One of my athletes, Steven, which Renee, he takes this time of year because he does have extra time, and I think we're even doing the we're doing the Festive 500 on Zwift, but then he skis in the morning, so kind of a mix of Nordic and skimo, and 2 days basically, kind of like every day, and it is 4 hours of aerobic, training, but it's like his time and to do this, right? Because he doesn't get the luxury of that time. So we kind of like prep and build into it, come into that fresh, and then go for it. And in that way, it's we treat it as a mini training camp. You know what I mean? Well, actually, a pretty big training camp, especially for time crunch athletes, but in the way of you know that couple week time period. So I think if you again plan ahead and can kind of structure your form, your fitness and freshness leading into a big block or a big camp or a big challenge of sorts, that's much better. And if you're listening to this podcast on Christmas Day, which is when this is being released, you can't do much in the way of like leading up to it in that sense. You kind of have to like read the room of your reality and what you can do this week. But I think when you have more time, yeah, go for it. Especially if you know you're not going to have that time once the new year comes around, you can just take a week and freshen up.
And I like that you said like building up to it and leading into it, because the Festive 500 and those kind of challenges, that's a lot.
Hmm.
And going from
That's a ton.
5, 6 hours a week to it's about a 20-hour week to do the Festive 500.
Hmm.
And that for some people could be too much of a good thing.
Hmm.
That
Yeah, for sure.
and I will put my hand up that back in my day as an athlete, I have buried myself in a end of year training camp so much that, and I've seen it with other athletes too, that if you need 2+ weeks off to recover from your training camp, it's not a productive training camp.
Hmm.
So it's getting, maybe a little bit hung up on the 500. That if you didn't get the 500, then it's, worthless. In the 8 days, well, maybe it's over 2 weeks. Maybe it's the 2 week. I know a lot of people. What is today, Monday? When we're recording this, they're going to have, 2+ weeks off because they get the, couple of days here and a couple of days after. I know it's, maybe not applicable for the people it's coming out on Christmas Day, but yeah, maybe your Festive 500 could be over 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be over the 8 days.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit better for you that you can actually absorb that training and it be productive rather than just going for this arbitrary goal. And I'll say, like, maybe the movie marathon goal, the whole Star Wars series, maybe that's not a great goal, you know, where maybe it's
But do it in a
I
month.
spent do it in a month,
Yeah.
or maybe it's uh instead of the 2 hours and 15 minutes of that movie, it's all riding. Maybe it's your warm up. I'm doing a dynamic warm up before, and then I'm doing my ride, and then I'm doing some yoga after for cool
Hmm.
down. And bing, bang, boom, that's 2.5 hours. But it's very productive, because just because you have extra time to train doesn't only mean riding your bike. It can be
Yeah.
some other things like working on mobility, daily yoga. That would be a great challenge. Do 10 days of yoga, or 2 weeks of yoga every day.
Yep.
That would be an awesome thing to add to your. I have an extra hour or 2 hours a day to train. It doesn't have to only be riding your bike. Something I'm actively doing right now. I'm refreshing my meal prep routine. I've been out of that routine and I'm getting back into it because I have a little bit more time now. That'd
Yeah.
be a great time to establish some really good habits as well.
Well, it's just that, Renee, like habits, right? And I think that's another hot topic this time of year. We kind of started the opening with that a little bit. And I think the habits are a more powerful force in our lives as athletes, as humans, than we realize. And just like the Festive 500, you know, is at this time of year, New Year is that turning point where people get reflective. They hopefully slow down and they think, and then they set their new goals and habits for the next year, right? So before the new year happens, take this extra time to form those positive habits that you want, because those habits take quite a bit to get into your psyche. Usually not like 28 days, right? Not 2 months. It's usually more like 3 months of repetitive behavior that will then sit in, and it'll become a habit. So yeah, to that point, I would say if you're already training, 8 hours a week ish, 6 to 8 hours a week, like a time crunch cyclist normally is, and you want to add a little extra, but you don't have a ton of time, increase the habit of mobility and yoga and some of the like, strength training, to get that in as a habit. And I'll even raise my hand and say that too. Like I kind of go back and forth on that. I do a pretty good job this time of year, then it wanes off, middle of the year, and it comes back. So I've been in time periods where I have really good habits of that, and I just feel better. I wouldn't say that I perform better necessarily on the bike, but I definitely feel better, move better, and have less of the um, I pick something up and be like, ooh, like I'm more fluid, right? And from a healthy
Yeah,
person standpoint, that's a positive.
not direct, maybe things that aren't directly impacting your FTP, but if you have more good days on the bike, you
Yeah.
feel better overall. And then, I'm a few years older than you, and I have to worry about, breaking a hip down the road here and carrying in my groceries. And, I think a lot of my athletes are active not just because they want to be a good bike rider. They use the bike as a tool to have a active lifestyle
Yeah,
and
that's right.
increase their longevity and quality of life. I get a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s who are training with me. Um, so yeah, I absolutely think this is a great time of year to work on those habits. And when you're in a low stress period, low stress meaning like maybe you have these 2 weeks off of work and you can totally control your uh, eating patterns and have that extra time to do a warm up before you get on the bike or do yoga before bed. Great. I think that's an awesome use of your extra time rather than just only riding your bike more
Yep.
or running or whatever your activity is.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. So I think, the real key here is consistency throughout the year. Balance it, have moderation and build those good habits as we enter in that new year time of season. And so to bring this thing home, I really want all of our listeners to take this time to actually slow down, be honest with themselves of what they can get in training wise before the new year. And if the reality is not a lot of hours, know that, all the gains of 2024, they're not going to go away overnight. They're not going to go away over a week. Okay. Even if you're just sitting on the couch from now until New Year, yeah, even the research says that's not how fitness and physiology works. So, Renee, anything that you want to add to that in the way of shaping up if you got extra time or not a lot of extra time?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of take it off coaching a little bit and be like, enjoy spending time with your family and friends. Whether
Yeah.
you have more time to train, you know, maybe you don't have to ride 6 hours a day. Maybe you can spend, I just, feel that way. I have older parents. It's great to spend time with your parents. If you have younger kids, and it's, great to, the wonders of the holidays for the younger kids and everyone in between. That, this is a great time to do that. And you don't have to worry so much about your training over these 2 weeks, whether it's on the high side or the low side of that. Yes, it's going to move the needle a little bit one way or the other, but it's not going to make or break your year. So, you know, enjoy the holidays, have pie for breakfast, and enjoy.
Well said. Thank you, Renee, for joining us. And thanks to you, listeners, for always tuning in to each episode. And to all endurance athletes out there, we wish you a happy holiday.